Okay, so we are recording, and we'll be able to use this for people to have a look at this when they come back. So welcome everyone to our very first online CRG, Community Reference Group. Just a little bit of housekeeping first. Please can everyone mute their microphones if you're not talking, just so that there's no distracting noise in the background. Feel free to turn your video off, but if you're speaking, it's quite nice to have the video on, and that especially applies to Ports of Auckland people, so that our guests can see you. What else did I need to remind people about, Morgan? And yes, we can see your screen, Morgan, so that looks pretty good. As I said, I really appreciate being able to sort of run this trial and run a community reference group by Teams remotely. We've been using this really successfully at the port during the lockdown. As Tony mentioned, we've had meetings of large number of staff, so we've had nearly 200 people on Teams meetings and found them actually really fantastic. We've been able to get people together at times they wouldn't normally be able to, or people who can't necessarily step away from their desk and attend an in-person meeting due to the nature of their task. So yeah, it's been a really useful tool. While we're doing this as a trial, I wouldn't see us doing this permanently for CRG. It might be that using Teams, if it works well tonight, and if people give us some good feedback on it, it might be something we can use so that we could have in-person meetings, we could have Teams meetings, and we could have a combination of both, just to try and make it as accessible as possible for as many people as possible for these Teams meetings. So that's my welcome. It's nice to see you all back. It's been quite a long time. We missed that meeting that was due in March, thanks to the lockdown. I think the last actual proper meeting before we had the Christmas one, which was fun, but the last sit-down meeting I think was September. So it's good to see everyone back. Right, Tony, I will hand over to you, and you can give the business update and the automation update. Oh, sorry, one other thing. Some of you will want to ask questions, I'm absolutely sure. Best, if you've got it on your screen, there is a raise your hand function, and we can see who is raising their hand to speak and then come to you. You can turn on your camera and you unmute yourself. Try not to, I think it's best with these sort of meetings, we've found that if we do things in a more structured way, so it's slightly more formal than our in-person meetings. So maybe we let Tony do his business update and then have questions on that, and then do the automation update and questions on that, and so on and so forth. So we get to the end of each presentation and then do the questions after that. So if everyone's happy with that, I will bow out, mute myself, and over to Tony.
Thanks, Matt. The only thing you forgot is to be kind to one another.
Of course, goes without saying.
It is. So, look, it's great to be here, and we've missed catching up with you. But just to give you a bit of an update in terms of business, I mean, our priority has been obviously keeping people safe and with new border controls. But we were somewhat lucky, actually. We at the last week of February, we found out that there was no PPE gear, or a drastic shortage of PPE gear in New Zealand. So we formed a crisis team. That crisis team then looked at how we could source PPE gear, and 3M stood up with, I think, about 60,000 masks. And then Alistair was appointed our pandemic team leader. And then we thought it might be a bit of a practice, but it turned out to be reality. What would we do if, in fact, COVID-19, we had an outbreak, and then on that basis, what would we do in terms of protecting our workforce? And that was no small job. We soon found out, actually, that yes, we were short of PPE gear in New Zealand. We asked, based on the restrictions when we went to level 3, then level 4, the distancing, we needed another 80,000 masks, and the government said why, or MB. So we, in fact, purchased $1 million worth of PPE gear ourselves, direct from China, to ensure that we could protect our staff. So, and we're very pleased that we've done that. But it was a very unusual time. And what we did do was separate our workforce into separate teams. So they would come into the port through a health check, temperature check, and go to separate containers with their separate teams. They would then have briefing sessions by the shift manager supervisors. They would then go through security. They would be asked health questions. They would then move to their separate teams porticom, where they stayed well and truly, and they were well fed and well watered. And what was really interesting in all of this is that they felt important, and I know that might sound, they are important, they've always been important, but all of a sudden they felt that New Zealand and Auckland was relying on them, and many other port CEOs that I've spoken to, is that these people really stepped up, and I have to say took their role and responsibilities really seriously. So we're very proud of what the team has done. Could we just move to the next slide, please? Thank you. This just gives you an aerial view. So you'll see just mid-range on the, yep, that's it, that these are the separate areas, and each team member would walk through a little hut. Yes, you're pointing at the hut, go into their separate teams. A lot of laughing and joking in the morning. I was down there most mornings at 6 a.m. with the shift changeovers, and I have to say they responded well. Then through security, and then to their individual porticoms. And we stayed, I mean, this was basically under 3 and 4, and we've stayed there ever since. So what we did do was make a complete separation between office staff who work from home and the workforce, to ensure that there would not, if there was an outbreak, that there wouldn't be sort of infections. But it has worked well. We had some close calls, but I have to say the honesty of our workforce and their relationship with people working in rest homes, and the questions they asked honestly, we sent them home, and we always sent them home on full pay. So so we're back to what I would call, it's not a normal, but we have to be prepared that we go back to level 2, level 3, level 4. So we're making sure that we are prepared to do that, and then we can keep the port open and operational. In terms of volumes, well, you can imagine that we've taken a bit of a hit. So in March, the first month, container volumes were down 14% and cars 17%. In April, container volumes were down 23% and cars 28%. In May, we achieved throughput at the container terminal, actually same as last year, about 45,500 containers, but we were 75% down on cars. And if we look at June, we're probably going to be 1 to 2% behind last year, but 50% down on cars. So we had 4,500 cars last month. Usually we get 20, and this month we'll have around 9.5. As I said, normally we get 20. One of the things you'll see here, so we moved 68,000 containers, and I have to say everybody in the supply chain really collaborated extremely well. One of the issues that we really had, or big issues, was government and government agencies understanding the supply chain. So for example, the first week, government said, well, you can only move essential goods from the container terminal. So I said through our Port CEOs forum with the MOT and government, well, you know, we have 10,000 containers through this week, and only 2,000 are essential. So what do you think we should do with the rest? And within 1 week, we would be congested. So something needs to be done. So, you know, they took notice of that, and the containers then were moved off the wharf to distribution centres or to Wiri. Then the second challenge we had was, well, if a company who is deemed essential and are unpacking essential items from containers, why can't they unpack non-essential items? Because they've got the protocols and processes in place. And that would ensure that the empty containers were available for export. So that happened. Then the next, I guess, challenge we had is that the government or MOT were going to issue a decree. So it was on a Sunday night, that you cannot discharge cars off PCCs or ro-ro ships because they're non-essential. So I contacted the CEO of MOT and said, look, can you hold off? I said, because on these ships, We've got new cars, used cars, ambulances, police cars, carriages for Auckland Transport, agricultural machinery. Oh, I see. Okay, so we then put a business case together with the industry, and government accepted it. So what it did make me realise is that actually there is very little understanding in Wellington of the interdependencies of and the resilience of the supply chain. So there's some work to be done there. All right, so I'll stop there. I've rambled on probably too much, but I can take questions on this now.
Sorry, something else I should have mentioned before. Another way to ask questions is in the meeting chat. So if anyone thinks of a question while one of the speakers is talking, just type it into the chat and we'll pick it up as we go through. To get the chat, actually, Morgan, can you show that on your screen? If you wiggle your mouse, you'll be able to point to where the chat thing is on that little task. There it is there.
There you are.
Cool. So it's another way to ask a question.
Well, look, I just might move on. I can't see any questions here for the moment. Or you can raise your hand and speak up. So also what we had to do during the intervening period was stop the automation project because we still had some training to do and distancing was a problem. But what we have been doing actually is ensuring every week we've had a 6 crane operation with ongoing crane trials. So those cranes are quite different to the ones we've got on FX and Ferguson North. They're big, fast machines. So it was a chance to give the crane drivers some good experience. And in terms of automation, during the lockdown, we took back the area that was possessed by automation and the training, but that's since gone back, and we've had further what I would call rehearsals with ships. So we had our 3rd rehearsal ship last week, and I have to say we're actually really happy with where we are. We for 3 ships in a row, we've landed on around 20.1 moves per hour. And nowhere in the world has that been achieved. It's only around 6, 9, and then the next week you'll go 10, 15. We've got another ship at 3 a.m. on Thursday morning. We'll do 300 moves on that ship. We're doing receival and delivery with the Blue Strads as well along the Rome grid. We're very happy with the way that is going. And then next week we've got an extra caller for empty containers, which we'll handle on the Northern Berth. And from there, we think we can hopefully press the button and say, on the Northern Berth, we can fully automate and do all the full exchanges. So happy with where we're at. And of course, it's giving us that extra capacity that we actually need. Happy to take any questions. Thanks, Yvonne. Yes, it is good to see the cranes working. Maybe everybody's a bit shy or they haven't unmuted. I'll hand it back to you, Matt.
Okie doke. Thanks for that, Tony. And yeah, still feel free to pop in questions if you've got them. I'll turn my camera on. That's a nice thing to do. So next up, Alistair, could you give us a bit of an update on the car handling building to kick off with?
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and hello, everyone. I guess most of you have been along Keith Street and seen the car handling building taking shape. The construction of it is going pretty well. We had to stop work during the lockdown but Hawkins have done a really good job restarting and getting moving on that. So we're sort of into the final stages of that project, and the building will be finished early August time, so not too far away. So it's all the sort of finishing off work that's happening on that at the moment. So there's just a couple of images up there on the screen. The top one of how it would look in the daytime, with the sort of green facade facing Quay Street. And at night you can see what we're trying to show in the image at the bottom is the western facade, the facade facing the city, has got 3,000 LED lights on there that will put on light displays and light shows. We've got individual ramps going up to each floor. You can just sort of see them sticking out at the bottom there, and we've got the mirror of that on the other side. So we've got separate entrance and exits from every floor to make it efficient to get vehicles in and out as they come off the ships and go onto the transporters. Do you want to go to the next slide there, Morgan? So this is a shot taken on a slightly cold wintry day about 2 weeks ago, and just showing progress. The front facade is largely complete. We've got all the plants in on the green wall there, and the western facade has still got a few more sections to go on at that northern end. You can see the concrete roof structure there. So there's no ramps that go up there. That's we've got stairways going up, and that is designed to take the loading of the public park that we will be putting up there, and I'll come on to that in a wee bit more detail in a few minutes. It's a question about the planting, but I'm going to come on to that a wee bit more as well. So that's how it looked a couple of weeks ago, and we've now just about got that western facade all finished. Morgan, can you move on to the next one? So here's a shot of the front facade with the planting going up, the green wall. It's these plants basically sit in pouches that are made of a sort of fabricy canvas material, and then the soil that sits in the pouch, and there's a whole lot of different native species that have been selected to go up there. They've been selected on the basis of the environment, so it's south-facing facade, and also we've had to go through quite an approval process with MPI to make sure that we're not creating an environment that's going to harbour foreign mosquitoes and all sorts of things like that. So there's been quite a process to work through there. And then there's an inbuilt irrigation system that works off a whole series of sensors and makes sure that each pouch that contains the soil in the plant has enough water in. It's actually quite a unique system. It's designed here in New Zealand and built in New Zealand, and it's actually the world's largest soil-based vertical garden. So there are larger vertical gardens around the world, but they're all hydroponic based, and this is a very unique New Zealand invention. A company set up by a lady in South Auckland who wanted a vertical garden at her house one day, and has basically set up a very successful business around designing and building these vertical gardens. If we just go on to the next slide, Morgan. So on the western side facing the city, we're going to have around 3,000 LED lights on that elevation, and each light will be individually programmable, and each light can be set to go for a different color and also a different brightness. So by changing the color, the intensity, the brightness of every one of those 3,000 light arrays that are on there, you can put patterns in there and all sorts of things. And I've seen some images of what has been done overseas, and it's incredibly spectacular. We've partnered up with a company called Signify. There is a sort of an innovative offshoot of Philips Lighting, and Signify are providing the system for us, and they will we've come to an arrangement with them where they will host the software and the programming of the lights, and we will provide them with what we want to go up there, and they will program it and set it all up for us. So it's basically a giant set of Christmas tree lights that can all be individually programmed. The rooftop, we go on to the next slide, Morgan. We've got design of the rooftop park underway. That design work was halted for a while during the lockdown, and we went out to schools and that late last year, and we got feedback on what people wanted to see up there, and we're taking that and we'll bring some options. We'll be putting some options out in the next few months in terms of what that park looks like up there. Plus Architects, who have designed the building, we have also engaged them to come up with a concept for how we get people up there. And this image shows basically that concept. It's very funky. It's quite sculptural, and it's actually going to be quite a fun structure to use. It basically contains a central lift shaft, a stairway that then wraps around that, and then a ramp system for pushchairs and wheelchairs, and that then wraps around all that. And things are sort of set at different pitches and sort of defy the eye in terms of how they work. And at various points, you can actually cross over from one to the other. So you can race your kids part way up the ramp and then swap over to the stairs and cheat a bit and go up on that and back to the ramp and things like that. So it's sort of designed with an element of fun in mind, a element of sort of sculptural form, and really trying to attract people's attention to how they would actually access the park and they're on the roof. So we're just working with the structural designers at the moment around how we make it all stand up and the form of it, and getting some further structural concepts done on making sure that it's all going to be buildable and that at the moment. So look, that's me in terms of the car handling building. I don't know, I see there's a question in there from a series of questions from Tim. I hope I've answered those. Any other questions?
Alistair, Tim's got a specific question about how high the panels go above the rooftop level. It looks about the same as the height of a balustrade, but perhaps you could answer that one.
Yeah, the panels go around about just over a metre above the roof height.
I have one other question.
Yep.
The light display, 300 bulbs, all that, I understand, and it's programmable and so forth. Who does the programming? How is it going to be expressed?
Yeah, so there's actually 3,000 bulbs in there, Tim, and this company called Signify, that's part of Philips Lighting, does the programming for us, and we will provide them with the images that we want programmed in, and then they will scan those in and do that programming work for us. So
how will you select the images?
Yeah, good question. So Matt, you might want to answer this, and we've still got a bit more work to do around it, but we intend to basically engage with community groups and that, and this is there as kind of a sculptural form in terms of that lighting, and there'll be all manner of things, from competitions for kids to come up with things, to working with mana whenua, to looking at events, Anzac Day, having some.
Will it be operating 168 hours a week?
We haven't worked out that detail, Tim, in terms of the hours of operation, and
that will determine how much content you need.
Yep.
Our group is very interested in the content, particularly.
Yep. No, that's fine. And I
And
think
we watch it with a hawk's eye.
Yep.
In what sense, Tim? Do you want to contribute to it, or you've got concerns about what it might be, or I mean, really, it's a blank canvas at the moment. So what we developed to put on there, we love ideas.
We may, or members of our group may contribute, but we particularly want to monitor the content to see if commerciality creeps in.
Oh,
you mean advertising?
Exactly.
No.
We wouldn't tolerate that, and we hope you will not either.
No, and we've given councillors and others undertakings that it's not there for advertising.
Okay. Well, we look forward to what comes up.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think you will be quite blown away when you see this is one of the largest that's been done, but when you see some of the smaller scale stuff that's been done elsewhere in the world, it's just quite mind-blowing how these things can be programmed to do all sorts of very clever things with the lights.
Thank you.
Just a final comment on, you've asked when it might be turned on, Tim. We were hoping to hit Matariki, but unfortunately COVID has interfered with that, so I don't have another date. Alistair, I don't know if you do, but perhaps August.
Yeah, I think the lights, it's probably going to be August, September time that we're in a position to turn them on.
And then the rooftop park, again, that's been affected by COVID. Perhaps you just want to comment on that briefly, the timing of it, like when we might be able to construct it. And I know we have to seek resource consent for it. Alistair, is that correct?
Yeah, so we're advancing all the concept design at the moment. There's a bit more consultation to do, and the plan is to then apply for resource consent late this year for it. So we need resource consent for the structure that goes out in front of the building and for a few other bits and pieces.
And just one final comment, Ross has asked, what are the plans for the wharf space that will become available once the car handling building is in operation? Alistair, do you want to comment on that?
So I guess there's a couple of answers to that. So firstly, and putting COVID aside here, we needed the additional capacity. So we were running out of capacity on the port, and we needed capacity, and we couldn't expand further outward, and the only way was to go upwards. So it's there to provide capacity for the vehicle trade. It does give us quite an uplift in capacity, which means that we initially have some latent capacity, and we are making some space available for the fishing fleet that will move off Horsley Street Wharf, Wynyard Wharf area into the port for the America's Cup, and then it will the rest of the area will then revert back for cargo. So if there's no other questions, should we move on, Morgan, to discuss channel deepening? So I guess a little bit of background here. We basically applied late last year to Auckland Council for a consent to deepen the channel. We have a need to cater for larger ships, larger container ships, and the issue that's going on in the background is that basically as shipping lines are consolidating and emerging, they are phasing out all the smaller ships and building bigger and bigger. And as the larger ships get built for the transatlantic trades and those other big trades, they are displacing ships offloads onto other routes, and we have this cascading effect where these ships then get pushed down into other trades across the world and then down into Australasia and that. So whenever Tony goes and sees our customers, I think probably the first thing they're always asking him is, when you're going to deepen your channel. We are one of the last ports in Australasia to deepen our channel for these ships. Otago, Littleton, Tauranga, Melbourne, etc. All those ports have done deepening and can cater for these larger container ships. So we've done a lot of design work on what we need to do, and you can see in this what this image shows is shows the alignment of the channel going out from the port around North Head and up around Rangitoto. It shows that the channel is actually naturally very deep just off the port and going around North Head and that, and there's no dredging in that area. And then we get into an area where it's sort of blue and a bit green and some red, and they signify varying amounts of dredging in those areas. And then as we get up onto the strait, there's patches that we have to dredge, not the whole lot. And then there's a bit more around the next corner, and then a bit more dredging up the top end. So it varies along the length of the channel as to how much we need to dredge. We technically, the resource consent for dredging, it's arguable would probably be a non-notifiable consent. But in the interests of being transparent and open about what we're doing, we asked that council notify the consent, which they did before Christmas, and there was around 200 submissions submitted to council on that. We're applying for deepening in 2 stages. So the channel's currently 12.5 metres deep, and we have applied to deepen it, the first stage to 13.5 metres, and then the second stage to 14 metres. And the applications for a total of 2.5 million cubic metres of material to be dredged, which sounds a bit, but when you actually compare what other ports do around New Zealand and globally, it's actually a pretty small volume. Tauranga, for example, were way up over 10 million in terms of the type of volume that they dredge for their deepening. So where's the process at the moment? So we have a hearing, resource consent hearing starts at council on Monday the 22nd of June, and that hearing runs for a week, and then there's a couple of reserve days set down for the following week. And we'll be and our technical experts will be presenting our evidence, and there'll be various submitters presenting their side of things too. So that's probably it there. I'm just having a look at the comments. Are there any questions on the channel deepening?
No, I can't see any hands up.
Okay.
Maybe on to cruise.
Cruise is an interesting challenge for us at the moment. I think, as you're aware, the government has basically banned cruise ships from entering New Zealand waters until the 30th of June, and we expect that that ban will probably be extended. We have gone from 151 bookings next season down to about 25 at the moment, and we expect those bookings will probably even drop off further than that. So I think some of the lines are keeping their bookings with us in the hope that there's some sort of trans-Tasman bubble or Pacific Island bubble, and they can get a few cruise ships circulating around the place. But it's, the cruise industry has taken a huge hit from COVID-19. One of the things that is happening with the industry is that obviously the lines are trying to reduce their costs where they can, and they are accelerating the scrapping of a lot of the older ships, which happen to be the smaller ships. And the flip side of that is it's going to leave us with a lot of the larger ships. We don't we're not exactly sure when the industry is going to bounce back, or what form it's going to bounce back in, or how it's going to look. Obviously, the shipping lines have got huge investments in those assets, and they'll want to try and get them working as soon as they can. But we're kind of expecting the volumes to be pretty low for the next couple of years before they start coming back. You're probably aware that Auckland Council has pulled funding for the Queen's Wharf Dolphin, and that project has come to an end before it's got off the ground, really. And then that sort of raises the question again in terms of how we cater for these larger cruise ships in the future. And there will no doubt be more work done on that, just to understand timing and what's happening and where we're going with all that in the future. Is there any questions on that? There's a question in there, sorry, there's a question I see that from Papa about sea disposal that Matt has answered. So 50 kilometres east of Kuvia Island, which is, can't remember the exact distance, Matt, off the Coromandel, but it's probably another 50k on top of that, isn't it?
Thank you.
Sorry, yes, I just realised I can actually speak. I'm looking for a map to send you.
Sorry, I was just a bit slow with my question.
That's right.
Yeah, from that last update. I just wanted to sort of more of as an FYI as well, that I'm now co-chair of the Hauraki Golf Forum.
Right.
And we have landed on a new goal to end marine dumping in or near the Hauraki Golf Park.
So what do you mean by near the golf park?
Well, we're going to be taking a more, I guess, proactive approach towards dumping near or around the golf park, in and around. So I mean, now that we've got 2 new co-chairs, we're just going to be a little bit more proactive in submitting on applications. Yep.
So the site that we've got, Pippa, as well, outside of the golf park, but it does raise, there's a big regional issue here. So over the years, the majority of the dredging has gone into our Ferguson reclamation, not just our own dredging, but from other parties, from the boat mariners, from the Navy, and there's a real need for, I guess, some regional disposal method. There's so many parties that do it. There's been the America's Cup dredging, there's the boat marina dredging, there's ours, there's the Navy, there's all sorts of other things from time to time, and there's certainly some challenges in there in terms of where those materials go.
Yeah, absolutely recognise that. I mean, we're just trying to, we all know that the Hauraki Gulf is in a really dire state, and there just needs to be a whole lot of a new approach to how we interact with the Gulf in a whole lot of different ways.
Yeah, and so we've I might, sorry, Pippa, Nigel, you're on the call, aren't you? I might get Nigel just to comment, Pippa, that there's a couple of things that we've identified that are in our resource consent application around some improvements and some studies and that we're prepared to commit to as part of the work. Do you want to comment, Nigel?
Sure, Alistair. Good evening, all. Yeah, I guess it's really in support of sea change and the sort of the spatial plan that was put out a few years ago.
Can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, right.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay, Nigel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why. No, it's just following on from Alistair. It's so as part of the our support for the sea change spatial plan, we're looking at some of the challenges for restoring the sort of the benthic habitat in the Rangitoto Channel. Historically, it was a major habitat for dog cockles and for greenlip mussels. And these are largely, they were sort of, I think, removed by overfishing in the sort of the late 50s, I think, from what I've read. And they haven't recovered. These former colonies, biogenic colonies, haven't recovered. And so we're just sort of looking at what, as we're in discussions with Auckland University now, to sort of try and get some research into why that would be, and then what can we do about it in terms of trying to encourage that part of the Gulf, reinstatement of that part of the Gulf.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nigel. That's probably it from me, unless there's any other questions. Morgan?
There was just one earlier question from Tim a little bit further up in the chat asking how frequently the channel will need to be repeatedly dredged.
Okay, so we generally do some maintenance dredging out there about every 2 years, and those volumes are reasonably low, so they're probably they would be under 10,000 cubic meters of maintenance dredging about every 2 to 3 years.
Thank you.
I'll hand back to you, Morgan.
Awesome. Thank you, Alistair. And sorry, I don't have my camera on, but next we have Rosie, who's here to give a bit of an update on our hydrogen project, which from memory, Ross asked to be added to the agenda this evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosie Mercer, General Manager of Sustainability at the Port. Morgan, do we have, is it just the one slide, or do we have any talking points on the next one?
Yes, this one.
Okay. So I think the main question that had come through was just wanting an update on the resource consent. So feel free to just let Morgan know what any specific questions are. But as a general project update, we lodged our resource consent last year, and it has progressed down a limited notified basis. We received 2 submissions through that limited notification period, and we are currently engaging with those the 2 submitters on the issues that they raised. Generally, the submissions were actually supportive of the project, but they just raised a couple of points. Some of them were quite valid about stuff that would be done in the next detailed design phase of the project. And so we are just working through that, and hopefully we should have a bit more clarity on what the outcome is going to be in the next couple of months. In terms of the actual procurement of the plant, obviously we're not going to actually place those orders till we've got that resource consent in hand and make sure that we've got that covered. We're also doing a bit of work with the government, particularly with MBIE, Standards New Zealand, and WorkSafe to work through some of the regulatory approvals that we still need for the project to go ahead. So those are sort of ongoing engagement meetings that we have with those groups, and it's going pretty well. Obviously, it's a new technology, and so Standards New Zealand and WorkSafe are trying to get there, make sure that they are addressing all the matters that they think are necessary. So Auckland Transport, they've placed their order for their bus, and that was announced last year, and that bus has actually been built down in Christchurch by a New Zealand company, Global Bus Ventures. So that's pretty exciting that it's a New Zealand company that's actually going to build that bus for Auckland Transport. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions for Rosie?
Sorry, I do have a question for Rosie. Rosie, so sorry, my mute button wasn't working. In terms of your sustainability objectives, do you guys, with the car park that you're building and all of that, have some rainwater catchments or have some compost facilities, or what's your waste system looking like? Just out of interest, curiosity, to be honest.
So was that with the car handling facility?
The rainwater catchments is, but just in general, like I have read your sustainability reports whenever they come through my inbox, but I was just more wondering in terms of the Ports of Auckland, what's your waste management looking like?
Sure. So I'll talk at a high level about our waste management in terms of our strategy, and then I'm going to just check in and see whether we've still got Alistair and Nigel on the line and whether they can add a little bit more. So one of the things that we had committed to was zero waste to landfill by 2040. And one of the things in our business plan for this current financial year is to complete a waste roadmap, which looks at a very high level around what are the key areas that we need to focus on over that period of time in order to actually achieve that. So we are working through that at the moment. It's ended up being something that we've done fairly late in the financial year, and it's in progress at the moment, and it's due for completion around the end of this month, early next month. So what we will have at the end of that is a lot more clarity on how we're actually going to tackle our waste streams. Over the last couple of years, though, particularly through the work that Nigel has done from his environmental position in the business, has been a huge amount of work in terms of establishing really strong waste management systems internally, developing strong segregation for our waste, enabling composting to happen within all of the buildings around the port. But we haven't actually extended that to segregation inside some of the third-party facilities as yet. In terms of rainwater, is Alistair still on the call, Morgan?
Yeah, I am on the call, Rosie.
Hey, do you have any information about the car handling facility and rainwater collection that was included in that design?
Yeah, we're not actually in that particular development. We're not actually reusing the rainwater for two reasons. We haven't got a need for it in that part of the port, and secondly, with so whilst it's the roof at the moment, when we turn it into a rooftop park, we're just a bit unsure as to what that runoff is going to be like, and that we do use rainwater on some of our other sites, so at our South Auckland freight hub and our Waikato freight hub, but not on the car park building.
Thanks Alistair. And one of the other quite cool things that we did last year, and I don't know that if it's been reported to this group, is a waste pilot that we did in partnership with one of the shipping lines, where they have quite a strong sustainability program in place within their global organisation, and they had done a lot of engagement with their staff, and they had set up segregation of waste on their ships. What they were concerned about is that segregated waste on board the ships, when it came off the ship, was just being all bundled together and treated in the same way and all being sent to landfill. So we partnered with that shipping line and actually undertook a final destination audit and looked at where the waste streams were actually going. And sure enough, it was all being homogenised and sent to either incineration or landfill, depending on whether it was from a trans-Tasman ship or a domestic ship. And so we engaged with MPI and developed some processes that enabled them to have some confidence around us mitigating any chance of contamination of recyclables, and adjusted the segregation system on board the ship to match the really good system that Nigel had put in place within the port. And then we worked with our service provider to enable the segregated waste to come off those ships and be remain segregated and be disposed of using our segregation system. And what actually one of the really big wins that came out of that pilot project was enabling a trans-Tasman ship to have segregated recyclables that MPI were able to clear as being not contaminated and therefore not having to be treated as quarantine waste and then be incinerated, and actually be able to be sent to recycling. So we have, this glimmer of hope that, potentially even the waste coming off ships, we can actually work in partnerships with those shipping lines to be able to achieve, diverting their waste from landfill and incineration as well. So that was actually a really big win for that partnership last year.
Thank you very much for that rundown. It's really important for me to get an understanding of the sustainability side of things, so I'm very grateful for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And Rosie, there's just another question that's come through from Ross asking, will the port use the hydrogen produced?
Yes. We will indeed. So we are looking at using hydrogen for a number of different types of vehicles. So certainly for some of our cars that need to do some of the longer distances, for example, stuff going down to Waikato, and also for our subsidiary trucking company, Conlink. So in time, their trucks would be on hydrogen. But we're also looking at, we'll be trialling different types of container handling equipment as well. And what's sort of coming out internationally is that where hydrogen will play a really vital role within a port operating environment will be, it can be used in combination with battery to the technical term they continue to use at the moment is the range extension. So enabling a battery electric container handling vehicle or piece of equipment to actually be able to go for longer duration without needing a recharge using the hydrogen fuel cells. We also think one of the areas where it's looking really promising as well will be for trialing it within the straddles, where the size of a battery and the weight of a battery will be a considerable hindrance to trying to establish electric straddles to be able to do the kind of duty cycles that the diesel straddles do. So absolutely, our first and foremost, our objective around demonstrating the hydrogen is for us to be able to use it within the port. It may also play a role, and they're certainly doing this at Port of Los Angeles at the moment, is trialing it for stationary energy storage. So potentially using it in a similar way to a battery would be used, so that you can have an isolated energy storage system. It might be next to a wharf for shore power, for ship to shore connections and the like.
Awesome. Thanks, Rosie. Matt?
Oh, you carry on, Morgan.
I was just going to say, if there's no other questions for Rosie or on our hydrogen, we can move on to our next topic, which Nigel will talk us through, air quality monitoring. So Nigel will give us a bit of an update, and I know Tim had a few specific questions about this as well, which I'm more than welcome to follow up with if Nigel does.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Morgan. So the air quality monitoring, I'm sure you would have all seen the reports and in fact even experienced the improved air quality during the lockdown. We were trying to get our new air quality monitoring station in place. Have been doing for the last couple of months, but unfortunately the lockdown sort of prevented us finalizing the arrangements that we needed to make. So what we're doing now actually is we've been in contact with Auckland Council, and we're looking at undertaking a study. It gives us a really unique, the alert levels of the pandemic give us a really unique opportunity to sort of understand better the influence of port activities on the surrounding air quality. So we're talking with council. They've got two sites, one on Customs Street, one in Queen Street. So we're looking at reviewing that information along with our own port activities, the sort of numbers of ships and so forth, and what days they were in, along with the meteorology, where was the wind conditions, what were the wind conditions like on those particular days, to get a much better understanding. There were very few other sources of contaminants in the air during those periods. So we'll be able to, we think we'll be able to have a really good understanding of the influence of port activities, certainly over that period anyway. So those conversations are underway, and we're looking to get those studies up as soon as possible. Auckland Council have already published a number of reports on this, but what they haven't done is to look specifically at us as the major source. They've just sort of generally commented on the air quality improvements that have been noticed, but they haven't then dived deeper and to look at the various source allocations and so forth. So we intend to sort of do that along with them. Yeah, the other thing that's also we will take the opportunity to have a look at too is in January 1st of January this year, the new IMO fuel regulations came into place. So this significantly reduced the amount of sulfur in the fuels that are international shipping are allowed to burn. So we're also going to look through back to the records leading up to and then post 1st of January just to see if we can detect any influences or any impacts or benefits from these new fuel standards. The port activities are the major source of sulfur in the air shed in this part of town. So hopefully the record will also enable us to look at that, the influence of that as well. So it's quite interesting. It's a unique opportunity. So we'll in conjunction with council, we're going to start looking at this. Don't you need monitoring station? Oh, I see. So I've just got a question there from Bruce. Don't you need the monitoring station in Parnell? Well, we have got 12 months of data from Parnell. We've got a very good record from there, and we've also got a very good year's record from Devonport. What we were trying to do before the lockdown was to actually move the Parnell site a little bit further west towards the old, in and around the old railway station. But unfortunately, our arrangements got, the lockdown sort of stymied our arrangements in there. So no, we have the weather conditions, so we don't really need the Parnell site as such. We know under what, so we have the weather conditions for each day, so we'll know whether those sites in Customs Street or Queen Street are downstream of the port, and therefore the specific influence of the port on those sites at that time. That's what we'll be looking for.
Yeah, hi Nigel, it's Bruce here. I guess we're in Dilworth Terrace, so we're down the bottom of Parnell, and you just have to look at the verandas, and you can see all the soot and so forth has landed on those verandas, and it just used to come and go. So obviously it is affected by the wind direction, but it was pretty high levels at different times. Just
those would be sort of the soot particles. So we will be looking at that type of. There is a specific monitoring equipment in Queen Street that looks at the particulates and can actually differentiate where those particulates came from. So whether it's from diesel engines like buses and trucks, or whether it's from ship engines and those sort of things. So we will be looking at that sort of thing as well. There is specific monitoring undertaken in Queen Street for that.
Yeah, it just seems a long way away, Queen Street, compared to where we are living, obviously. And I mean, the same with the steel ships. And recently, they were sending up clouds of whatever that is. It was.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
Which is a long way from Queen Street, and it's blowing back up over us. So I would have thought you needed some way of measuring that. Just otherwise, it's.
I think, Bruce. I think half the difficulty is that ambient air quality monitoring requires pretty specific standards and pretty specific conditions to be worthwhile. The air quality monitoring gets influenced by buildings and by all sorts of other things. So finding sites in these locations makes it really challenging. We've actually been trying for quite some time to find a site slightly to the west of where you are, as I said, down by the old railway station. Just A, that's suitable, B, that's representative of the airshed there, and it's not influenced by buildings and other activities. So in a congested area like downtown, it's actually quite a challenge to find any sites to put these monitoring stations in place. So the other thing too, I guess I would make the point. The soot and so forth that you see it is a nuisance rather than a contaminant of health concern, if you know what I mean. We'll be looking at the monitoring that's being done by Auckland Council, and also the monitoring we have done ourselves looks more at the sort of the health the parameters which are of concern from a health perspective. Whereas the soot itself tends to be, I appreciate it's still a concern, but it's more of a nuisance rather than a health concern. And there are multiple sources of those emissions. It's not in and around your location.
Awesome. Gay Richards asked a question. What's happened to the Devonport monitoring site?
Yep. So that's we managed. We've collected a whole year's data for that one, and the report. I've just received the draft report now, so we're comparing it to the Parnell information. If you recall, I think I gave a presentation a few months ago on the Parnell data, and that was very good in terms of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, or nitrogen oxides, and so forth. Well, the Parnell site is even better than the Parnell site. The Devonport site is even better than the Parnell site. It's got exceptional air quality, and so there is very little in the way of any kind of influence actually on that site. So it's That report will be finalised fairly soon and will be made available to anybody who'd like it. But it's actually quite a it was quite a surprise actually for a downtown site having such good air quality.
Awesome, thanks, Nigel. Sorry, Tim has also listed. There's 3 different questions there. If you can see them and speak to them.
Sure. Let me just expand it so I do get to read it.
Nigel, some of these things you've already touched on, but some you have not.
Okay. Right. So I got okay, one, oh gosh, it's just gone small again. Okay, so we've got existing Gladstone Road Parnell, when second study of at least a year adjacent to Spark Arena. Yeah, that's the site that we were looking for. Spark Arena, the old railway station. We haven't been able to finalize the arrangements for that site yet. So, and as I say, it got put on hold because of the because of COVID, the lockdown. So we're still looking at that, but probably what we will do is to undertake this study with council first and get a much better appreciation of the existing data that is available, and look, as I explained earlier, so we'll do that first. Target date for getting the whole waterfront profile, Princess Wharf to Ferguson Wharves. Well, I mean, the Princess Wharf area is very, very much covered by Auckland Council sites. So that's the Custom Street and the Queen Street. You know, as we've discussed previously, the one gap in the whole thing would be that Spark Arena area. So that's next on the list. But I think what we will do, given this opportunity that we have with council to review their existing data, we'll take that one first, if that makes sense. Happy to approach a body corporate well to see if it can host a monitoring station at the end of York Street in Parnell. Ross, I see that. I would have to go and have a look at it. I'm not exactly sure where York Street is. You know, we do have that excellent data set from Gladstone Park, and so, you know, or maybe we could talk offline about it, but I would say our priority would be a little bit further to the west at the moment. Yeah, Guy, yes, I agree. The Devonport Bayswater people would be interested. It's a very, it was an interesting result. Word not additional permanent monitoring stations provide fine-grained data to allow informed public and better decisions by POL and council. Well, yeah, I mean, Michael and sorry. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I've just got some people just arriving, so apologies for that. You know, these monitoring stations are relatively difficult to establish. They're quite expensive, but they're also what am I trying to say? You don't tend to put lots of them out to understand the you know, you want to identify sites which are representative. Having lots of them doesn't necessarily provide you any better information. It just provides you with a lot more data, if you know what I mean. You're looking at representative sites. Sorry, look, excuse me, I've just had some people arrive, so I'm getting a little bit confused. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Apologies. What am I? Yeah, sorry, I just got completely thrown that one. Okay. Yeah. So back to the monitoring stations in terms of ambient air quality, you don't really need fine-grained. You just need representative sites, I guess, is what I'd like to the message I'd like to sort of say. Ross English, sure. Let me know if you'd like to progress it. Okay, Ross, certainly will.
Awesome. Thanks, Nigel. Tim, was there anything else you wanted to add? I see you've got your hand raised.
Yes, there is. The data I provided in my previous questions was extracted from the minutes of the CRG meeting of the 26th of June last year. That's a year. That's a long time. And what I want to know is, will we ever achieve, and when will we achieve, a geographically integrated report of air control quality along the seafront?
Yeah.
The question is when? When? It's already taken a year to get to where we are.
Yeah, and look, I totally understand your frustrations, and I share them. We have been working with...
You don't share them in the same sense that residents in the city center share them, all right? We smell them 168 hours a week, whatever they are. So our sense is with us all times. It's not just a professional pursuit.
Yeah. Look, we have been trying, and I've been trying very hard with to try and find a site on Kiwi Rail land, but that, you know, we just kept hitting brick walls. No, whichever way I attempted, I kept hitting a brick wall to it, and you know, and it's been extremely difficult to try and fill that gap through into that area. You know, the only thing I would say is that, you know, we do have 2 sites with data for over 12 months, 12-month period each, and the air quality, the ambient air quality for those sites are very, very good from a you know, from a public health perspective. Auckland Council has a new site on Customs, between the corner of Customs and Albert Street, so that is also going to provide further information. The Queen Street site that Auckland Council has is a long-term site. It's recognised having its challenges for particulates because of the topography. So there is quite a good understanding of the air quality and the sources of influencing that air quality in these areas. It is being put together, and I think the only way that we can really really give you the picture you're looking for is to be working with Auckland Council, and that's, you know, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move forward with these with council so that we can answer the queries and the questions you've got. But I think also the data that we do have is demonstrating that the air quality is actually of good. It is good quality. It's not a major concern. I think that would be a take-home message I would certainly like to leave people with.
The issue is not whether it's good or bad. The question is, what is it? All right? And that's what we're not getting here. Okay, Auckland Council has its sites. Ports of Auckland has its sites. Can you not talk from the same song sheet, please? Can you not amalgamate your data so you can provide a complete picture? Or does one have to go to different silos to get each little wedge of the picture?
Hey, Tim, if I
that is what we are trying to do, I would have said, yeah.
If I can just jump in there. Tim, so Nigel's been doing a hell of a lot of work to actually try and get this to happen. And a lot of these things are outside his control and our control. So, yeah, that's our goal, absolutely. But we have to work within the system that's available to us. To be fair, again, to Nigel, the report that we produced from the Parnell site was very thorough, and it did, as Nigel said, show that there was very good air quality, certainly the monitoring in that area. So we're going to do our best to pull together the available data, which will include council data and our own data, and then we'll present that report. So at the moment, that is the best that we can do. Really, I think in terms of what's being done, it should be Auckland Council that's leading this. And I know that they're really struggling for resources at the moment. They've had to make significant cuts and they've lost some key people, but we will do our very best to fill that gap within the limited resources that we've got. So we're going to do a study, the study that Nigel mentioned, and we hope, I'm not sure the time frame, how long that will take, Nigel, but hopefully we can report on that at the next CRG meeting. So it'll give us a bit more information.
Yeah, no, that would be my expectation. Yeah.
Thank you. Updates are welcome.
Yep. Right. I'll carry on from there. Now, Morgan, if you'll flip the slides.
All right.
But just before I start talking about the next slide, I'm just going to send off this poll. Hopefully you guys have had a bit of a chance to get used to Teams and see how it works. I'd be very interested in the feedback from the group that's here tonight as to what you think of the whole Teams meeting and how it's gone. So I'm now working from my computer and my phone. Hope that's working for you. Turn it that way. So yeah, just a little fun item to close tonight, or to end for our agenda tonight. As you know, we've got an electric tug on the way. The steel cutting ceremony was held last night in Vietnam, and that was pretty cool. That was done by Teams as well. So this new technology is really proving pretty useful. There's no need for us to go over there and burn a lot of jet fuel. We store it all from here at Auckland. So the steel's being cut. That tug is being manufactured in Vietnam, and that's something we wanted to do because this is a unique tug. It's something that we've done that's groundbreaking. It's world leading, and I think for New Zealand, it's something that is groundbreaking and world leading. So we wanted Aucklanders in particular, but it's open to everyone on the internet to come up with names for the tug. So we had a wee competition. As you can see, we got over 3,000 submissions from across the country, mostly from Auckland, though, to be fair, the preponderance of the name suggestions. We run a very carefully thought out process, so we didn't really want to end up with Tuggy McTugface or many other variants of that particular name. It wasn't one we were going to choose. We did get a few of those, but interestingly, it wasn't they weren't the most popular suggestions put forward. And we got something like 2,600 unique names. Some of them were pretty far out. There was the Electric Disco Biscuit was my personal favourite, and the Dancing Queen of COVID. But we had quite a few really cool name suggestions. We've gone through these names. We've done things like test them over the radio for legibility. So it's quite important, obviously, when you're manoeuvring ships. One good suggestion was Thor, the god of thunder and lightning, who's also very strong. Unfortunately, Thor sounds like Thor, very easily confused, so we've had to ditch that one. But the names you see there, Adahi, ET, like not extraterrestrial, electric tug, but obviously it's a bit of a play on ET. And one of our marine team joked that they can now call out ET, come home, go home, when they finish their jobs. Hiko and Sparky. For those who don't know, Adahi is to lead, to escort, which is very fitting for a tug, and that's its job. And Hiko is te reo for related to electricity, lightning, and those sort of things. So I think it's a good range of names. We're happy with them. We'd be happy with any one of those names. Morgan, perhaps you can pipe up here and say whether or not the website for voting is live.
Not quite live yet, but should hopefully be live from tomorrow.
Okay, it's going to be live from tomorrow morning, and you can vote on that. And votes close on Sunday, and then the name will be announced on TVNZ Breakfast next week. So a bit of fun there, and something for hopefully Aucklanders will love this and will adopt this tug as their own. I see Ross has said easy, pick a te reo name. Yes, Ross, go and vote. My favourite's Hiko, but I think it's up to everyone. So yeah, I see there's a few suggestions coming. Click on that link or note the link down. Actually, Morgan, do you want to type it into the chat, the link, and then do they activate so people can just click on it afterwards? I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll send you out the link. It'll go out with a press release as well, which everyone in the community reference group will get. Oh, there's Paul McLucky. He's come back into the lobby. And yeah, have your vote. Cool. So that's me for tonight. Last one is just any other business. Has anyone got anything else that they would like to raise? And there's a beautiful photo taken by one of our neighbours. Bruce has asked, is there an upper decibel noise level that ships must operate under? Nigel, could you comment on that? It's not directed at ships directly, is it? It's in the plan, and there is a decibel level at the boundary that we are limited to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I am. It's a general port hum, if you know what I mean. It's there are noise limits for average, the average noise that you get. We refer to it as a port hum, and then there's also a maximum noise limit as well. There are different.
Are you able to tell us what those are, or is there somewhere we can find out what they are?
Sure. They're in the plan, but I can send them out. We have that. Yeah, I can send that out.
Yeah, definitely. We can include that in the minutes.
Yeah, that last steel ship you had loading, I guess, just seemed to be take us back in time quite a bit. I mean, clearly it wasn't working through the night, but it definitely was dropping the scrap steel into the hull again and creating quite a noise.
Yeah, that was a heavy plate steel.
Yeah, and we'd be quite happy to put some noise measure devices up here if you like on our houses, so you could hear what they're actually getting up to. But
sure,
I can't believe they weren't exceeding the limits. But
I mean, we actually have got 3 monitors in the field at the moment. Prior to lockdown, we were revamping or updating our port noise model, and a lot of the equipment's changed, so we were collecting information, ambient information. So we're in the process of, it's similar to the air quality, we're in the process of looking at the influence of port activities on the surrounding noise as we speak, and we've done some very preliminary analysis at the moment. So so we've got the average port hum during the different levels of the alert levels of the pandemic restrictions, and we did notice a decline in ambient noise levels. The higher the restriction, the lower the noise levels and so forth, as you'd expect. There was less activity around. Just getting back to your ship, to the scrap steel, we did some extensive monitoring on that 2 years ago. It was the same sort of product, very heavy plate, and the actual peak noises for that, I appreciate it's a different type of noise to what is usual and what is experienced all the time. But actually, in terms of compliance, it doesn't contravene the levels in the plan, and I can run you through the details of that if you like. But
yeah, maybe we could do that offline.
I'd be happy to actually, Bruce, just to show you what we've got, because we did do quite a extensive monitoring a couple of years ago on that product.
Yeah,
and then we're using the data that we've got now. From the 3 monitors, we've got one in Devonport, one in Parnell, and one on the port itself. We are able also to look at the impacts of that activity over that 1 week. Was last month, wasn't it?
Yeah, it just, I mean, previously anyhow, I won't waste people's time, but it'd be good to have a conversation about that if we could. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, just lost my mouse for a second there. Okay, I think that seems to be it, and we're at 7 o'clock. So how about we wrap it up there? We are always available to take further questions by email or by giving us a call. And thank you very much for coming. How did that vote go? Did everyone have a little vote? Did it work? One response. Oh, the Gay says yes, much more likely to attend via Teams, especially in the winter. That would be cool. Mix of teams are face-to-face. Okay, so by the look of it, the Teams has kind of worked pretty well. I think we'll see if we can find a way to make that work. Weave it in so that we get face-to-face meetings from time to time, and we can go on little excursions again. I think those have been pretty good. So again, thank you all very much for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for coming.
Matawa.
Bye all. Bye.
Mā te wā.
Bye.